It's time for
DodgerHeads.
high fly ball into right field. Dodgers have won it all in 2020. Shohei Ohtani, 50-50 club. Strikes him out. There's a drive. Shohei Ohtani. Freeman hits the ball. She is gone. Birthday party, Los Angeles. Your Dodgers have won the World Series.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Blake, and I'm filling in for Jeff today, who is not available. So first time on the host seat, bear with me a bit if it's a little bit of a struggle here, but I'm joined by Anthony. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. We picked up the series win, so feeling a little bit better about everything. There's no cure quite like the Rockies right now.
Yeah, I wrote that in my recap. It was just what Doc ordered. Mixed in a Dave Roberts reference there a little bit. Call back to what the doctor order reference. So yeah, that worked out pretty well. Yeah, after that tough stretch there, it's nice to see the Rockies. So we'll get right into it. The Dodgers have now won a series again. The sky is no longer falling. What were your takeaways from tonight?
You know what? I thought that the pitching looked great again. Landon Knack, nice bounce back start. All of that's good. But I think it feels like the offense is starting to see a little light here. Max Muncy, little bit of a better approach. He's seeing a lot more pitches, recognizing the strike zone a bit better, it feels like. Pages, and some of these guys aren't necessarily getting the results quite yet, but the approach looks better. Pages is in that category for me as well. I thought he's put some decent swings on balls. The timing's maybe a little bit off on some of these. He missed a couple of homers, I think, over the course of the last couple of games, just barely. So yeah, that's nice. Shohei, we're still getting there just a little bit. He had a couple of pretty ugly swings tonight, but obviously not worried about that guy. So yeah, nice to see the Rockies. The other teams have gotten to feast on them already, and so it's a good way to sort of maybe reset this offense and get them back to where they should be.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, like we've been looking at the Dodgers' so-called struggles recently.
Right.
They've been playing a lot of really good teams in this run, and this Rockies team is the first, not good team at all. Like, I know the Nationals aren't good, but they do have a lot of good young talent on that team. That's going to be good. Yeah, and like the Padres, the Giants, they've kind of been beating up on some of the bad teams, and they haven't had the chance to play good teams yet. Well, the Dodgers, all good teams. So I think it was nice to see the Dodgers finally get their run at a bad team, and they're taking advantage of that, getting 2 wins here. I think we should also note the pitching staff tonight, just really great. Landon Knack, 4.1 innings, 2 runs. Like, for a spot start, that's all you can really ask for at this point. Jack Dreyer, incredible again, 1.2 innings, no hits, no runs, 4 strikeouts. He has just been a complete surprise out of the bullpen. I think when they added him to the 40-man roster, no one really knew who he was, and he's been one of their best relievers this year, so great to see. Chris Taylor also coming through with a hit to drive in a run and then saving a run in the outfield. I know he's been getting a lot of hate from fans recently, but it was good to see him actually help the team win tonight. So, and of course, Tommy Edman and Will Smith just hitting all night. Will Smith had the big home run. Tommy Edman was 4 for 5, I think. So yeah, just a great night all around for the team to get back on track.
Yeah, for sure. And the Giants and the Padres lose tonight. So that part is always nice. I mean, for as bad as the Dodgers had been from a win-loss standpoint recently, they're like 2 games back of the Padres, game back of the Giants, I think it is, something like that. No one's running away from them.
Yeah, for sure. And then also the night started with Jackie Robinson Day. That was the whole celebration throughout the day. The Dodgers and Rockies both met at the Jackie Robinson statue, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was among the speakers there. I'm not sure if you got a chance to listen to him yet, but he made it very political. He had a lot of strong words about it. And then Dave Roberts was asked about what Jackie Robinson Day meant. And not to get too political, but he was asked about the Dodgers visiting the White House and then going to celebrate Jackie Robinson Day and within a week of each other. So
yeah,
there was a lot of criticism from fans about that. But to focus more on just Jackie Robinson Day, like how special is it for you, and what was your takeaways from today?
Yeah, I listened to Kareem and what he had to say, and that's kind of par for the course for Kareem. Look, he grew up as a young man, and as a player, obviously in that era, in term, with guys like Bill Russell and Muhammad Ali and those types. So there was a constant fight for, during that civil rights movement for him. So this hits very close to home for Kareem. So it's understandable why he uses that opportunity to say the kinds of things that he does. Um, but I think, for me as a kid, like one of the first books I remember ever reading was like, Blake, you might be too young for this. I don't know. But from school, they used to, in elementary school, they used to send you home with the like paper catalog of scholastic books, like book orders. It was a huge deal whenever those would come out. And I remember one of the first books I got, and one of the first books I ever remember reading was like a child's version of the Jackie Robinson story. And it was called Stealing Home. And I had that book for years, 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 years. Probably until I was like out of high school and in college. And so, yeah, Hawaiian Care gets its scholastic book orders. Yeah. And so, and understanding that story at a pretty young age, I must have been in like third or fourth grade when I first got that book. That story's always sort of struck home for me. And then, as I've grown up and became an adult and started my career, I was part of something called the Sports Journalism Institute, which is a journalism program for women and minorities, trying to get them into newsrooms and things like that. And so, I started to understand a little better about like what all of that kind of stuff was about. So this is always a pretty cool day for me. Major League Baseball has turned it into, for me, for my taste, a little bit of a farce, and it's just a way to kind of, you know, publicize things like shoes and gloves and stuff like that. And all of that is cool. Don't get me wrong. Like I like seeing it and all of that sort of stuff, but I think the message gets lost from Major League Baseball, and that's a part of it that I'm not a huge fan of. There's always someone who picks up the mantle, whether it be Doc or somebody else who's going to be discussing the day. But from a Major League Baseball office standpoint, it feels like they lose the plot a little bit.
So you didn't like the DraftKings 42% betting bonus for today that they were hyping up a bit.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I think MLB has kind of lost it. Like in their press release, it didn't use the word that it didn't say that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier or that he was the first black player. They didn't mention the racism of the time. And in previous years, they have done that. So it does seem like MLB is trying to move away from the politics of it, which it shouldn't be a political issue, but that is what it has kind of become in the current climate, which it's really messed up. But I do think today is a good day for people to remember like the impact Jackie Robinson had on Major League Baseball and just in America in general. He was a huge part of the civil rights movement, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was a huge part of that as well. So to have him speaking on behalf of the Dodgers for today and kind of represent the legacy of Jackie Robinson, I thought that was really cool, really special. He gave powerful messages, and it was really good to see.
I thought it was cool. Yeah, I mean, it was a great choice to have him do that. I don't know if they've done it with him in the past. This is the first time I really remember him coming and doing something like that with them. And then I also thought it was pretty cool that the Rockies were out there as well. And so everyone sort of got to listen to him. And look, Kareem is an icon. He's a sports icon, especially when it comes to this sort of topic. And so I'm sure there were a ton of players in that Rockies clubhouse who were interested in hearing what he had to say. So I thought that part of it was also a nice little touch that everybody got to kind of be involved with it. And it's become a touchy subject, obviously, especially with the Dodgers going to the White House recently and people having their opinions on that. And then the removal of the Jackie story from certain websites and all of that kind of stuff. It's become such a mess. And you're right. Like none of this should be political. Like I remember learning about this in school, aside from that book, and it was just a part of history. It wasn't necessarily, it definitely wasn't anything political, but it is what it is these days. I mean, you can't talk about hardly anything without it turning into something along those lines. So good on the Dodgers. whether you agreed with some of their recent decisions or not. Good on the Dodgers for having somebody like Kareem come out and deliver that kind of message. I thought it was well done on his part.
Yeah, and I will say in regards to the Rockies joining them, that's been a tradition Dave Roberts has started for the last few years now. The first year they did it, it was the Cubs who joined them in 2023, I think it was. And then last year, the Nationals were there joining them. So they bring in different speakers every time, and both the teams go out there and meet. And it is a nice way to show like that even though they're playing each other and they're rivals, like off the field, it's still just a game. And these are all men who are coming out there and giving respect to Jackie Robinson and honoring his legacy and story, learning more about it. And I think that is really cool to see. And it's one of the better things Dave Roberts has done, I believe, as the Dodger manager.
Yeah, totally. Kudos to him for sort of starting that, because he's a person who understands that history and is passionate about sort of what that message continues to mean, not just for Major League Baseball, but I think just sort of society in general. Like Doc is very cognizant of those sort of things and very sort of sensitive to just what it all means to not just him, but his players as well. And so, really nice to sort of see that touch be put on all of this.
Yeah, so unless you have anything else about the game, like I'll go into the updates here. I want to save a lot of times for questions for people. I think the game, pretty straightforward stuff, like Will Smith homer, pitching was good. We kind of discussed all that, but I don't think there's anything too much that stood out that needs to be discussed other than like they won a series again and this guy's not falling. So yeah, unless you want to add anything, I'll move right into updates here.
No, yeah, let's do it. Let's get some updates.
All right, so yeah, Dave gave us a few updates today. We'll start with Teoscar because he's probably the most likely to return soon. He's been out the last 2 games dealing with that stomach bug that has apparently affected every Dodger, like one by one, slowly moving throughout the clubhouse. So he's been out the last 2 games. He went through a full workout today. He was back at the stadium. And the expectation is that he's going to play tomorrow on Wednesday in the series finale. So should be nice to get Teoscar back in the lineup. But also, like the offense, they've been fine without him so far these 2 games. And it's been good to see.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be nice to have him back. And like I said, there's some light, it feels like, for some of the guys who have been struggling. And so you add him to that, and it just suddenly would lengthen this kind of lineup. Those guys can continue in this direction. And, I mean, he's sick, so that's never great. But and he was kind of hot, so never great to take time off then. But, buy guys a couple of days off here or there, then they're off Thursday. So that'll be nice for people like him and Freddie with the ankle and stuff. But yeah, it's the offense isn't all the way back yet. So yeah, they need to Oscar back in there.
Yeah, for sure. He'll be a big boost. And then also Blake Snell played catch for the 2nd straight day today. Yesterday, Dave Roberts said he came out of it well. He was watching from afar and talked to him. And Snell said he felt better than he hoped or expected. He threw around 20 to 30 throws. And it just looked really good and clean. And then again today, Dave Roberts said he came out of it really well. So it's encouraging updates for Blake Snell because he was shut down for a bit with the shoulder inflammation. And they got back like the best case scenario on the MRIs where it showed no damage or anything, just the inflammation. So they just recommended rest and shutting him down for a little bit. But seems like he's on the track to trending back up and rejoining the rotation probably sooner than we first expected.
Yeah, today or tomorrow, right, was the 2nd turn that he's missed. Is that right?
Yeah.
So he's eligible. I think it was retroactive to maybe the 3rd, if I remember correctly. So he's got a few more days before he's officially eligible. So hopefully not too much longer after that date hits. If he's playing catch on back-to-back days, that's obviously a pretty good sign.
Yeah, and then the final one is Michael Kopech threw a bullpen today. Dave Roberts said it went very good. He's not sure what the next steps are, probably some more bullpens, but he's going to stay around with the team to keep working. And they haven't had Kopech for the entire year. He missed all of spring training, so his buildup is going to be a bit longer. And it is something when they're not going to rush him. They have no need to rush him. The bullpen is pitching fine. They're not going to risk bringing him back too soon for April or even May potentially, just because there's not really any upside there. But to hear that he has been making some progress finally after not throwing for quite a while, that's pretty encouraging.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that too, and you sort of answered it already. But they slow play this, right? Like, I mean, there's no need for him right now. Even if someone were to go down in the bullpen, they have other guys. There's other options that they can go to. Um, so yeah, I mean, he feels, he may not be out this long, but he feels sort of like I mean, Kershaw's getting close if it's not for the toe, right? So, but he feels like a guy that we're looking at like later in the season where even if he's back before that, but like that's sort of his role. Like, you know what, you're hurt. The bullpen that we have now, those dogs can hold it down. Take your time, be 100% ready when you do come back, because there's no serious need for you in that bullpen right now. Like, they're handling it.
Yeah, and I believe also Tony Gonsolin pitched today. He did, and Evan Phillips. So I think it was Tony Gonsolin's third rehab or fourth rehab outing, and Evan Phillips is one ahead of him. So Tony Gonsolin went 4 innings. He gave up 3 runs, 6 hits, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. So the results aren't great there, but Dave Roberts just said they were hoping to get him into the 4th inning throwing, and kind of after that, if he got to the 4th inning, they could decide to maybe bring him back for his next turn in the rotation. So still got to build up more. Still not fully back, but overall his results have been good, and they could be adding him back to their rotation pretty soon here.
Yeah, big plus, big plus. I'm not too worried about the results. Sounded like he started good, and I think there were just some hiccups later on in the outing. But yeah, as long as he's coming out of it and he's healthy and he's not hurting the next day, great. Then it was a success.
And then Evan Phillips also pitched 1 inning, 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 strikeouts. So for Evan, the ERA in AAA, his rehab outings, hasn't been good. Has like a 7.7 ERA. He's had a few games of allowing multiple runs. He says he feels good. Do you have any concern about him, or is just kind of like the rehab up and downs kind of thing?
Yeah, especially for relievers, I tend to not put too much in what the final line is for them in some of these rehab outings, especially for guys who are back end sort of arms. They tend to thrive off of like the situation as well, especially when they've been good. Not always, but it's typical of them. So you bring them into a AAA game, whenever that might be, and some of that's not there. So and they may get beat around a little bit. I'm not too concerned about that. Again, the biggest thing is he coming out of these outings healthy? They'll look at his stuff, and if it's seriously bad, they're not going to bring him up before that. But I've seen guys come up and don't have a clean inning to their name before being brought back up, and then they come in and they do their thing. So I'm not overly concerned with it. You would like to see some results. I'm sure he would too. But I think the biggest concern now is just making sure that they're getting out of these assignments healthy.
Yeah, I think we also have to consider like defense in AAA isn't going to be what it is at the major league level. Even though we talk about the Dodgers defense is not being great, still miles better than AAA defense. And it's also a hitter's park in the AAA PCL league. So yeah, I'm not too concerned about it. I think he'll be fine. He wasn't helped by his defense in one of his previous outings. I didn't get a chance to like really look into what he did today, but yeah, I'm not too concerned with him. He has a pretty good track record now of being a reliable reliever for the Dodgers. And then finally, one more update. Kershaw set to make his first rehab appearance tomorrow at AAA. Excited? Worried? What's your thought process with Kershaw here?
I'm excited. Jeff and I talked about this a couple of shows ago, where it was surprising where the update that we got that said, like, I think it was from him, where he said that, his arm is ready. He's ready to go. It was the toe that was holding him back. And it felt like it was a little bit ahead of schedule, which was great. So if he's feeling that way and it was just the toe, and the fact that now he's going out on a rehab assignment means that it must not be bothering him as much now, and he's kind of ready. So I am curious. I would imagine, did Doc give a number on or anything like that in terms of number of pitches or innings?
No, not really. He's just said like it's going to be a while because he's still on the 60-day IL. So
Yeah.
I think it's May or June or something when he's eligible to come back. So they're not going to rush him. I assume it'll be 1 or 2 innings max just to kind of get him back on the mound and into a game. I don't think they're going to push him or I know they're not going to push him or anything. So yeah, I wouldn't expect too much from him.
No, yeah, and I think June probably feels about right. The good news is Am I back?
Yeah, I was wondering if it was me or you, though. But yeah I think.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. My Wi-Fi was acting weird there. I just noticed it. Anyway, he's got a long runway, and so I think that that's good because there's no need to rush, given that he's on the 60-day and all of that. They can really take their sweet time with this.
Yeah, we all agree with what you just said. All right, so one more piece of news here before we get into some questions. Bobby Miller starting tomorrow. We all know he was really good his rookie season. They had high hopes for him going into last year, and it was very bad, to be nice about it. Yeah, so what are your expectations for him? What are you looking to see from him? What's kind of your thought process around Bobby?
I was hoping he would be the guy who got called, just because I'm very curious how he bounces back from what happened last season. His ceiling is about as high as anybody who's available to them right now for spot start type of guys. So I just want to see sort of what that resilience looks like for him right now. He still has a place somewhere on this roster, I think. For how long, I'm not sure, but it's going to depend on what he can show. But he was one of the guys that I was most curious about coming into the season and when he finally would get his turn. So we're here now and against a lineup that's not very good. Maybe that helps. You're going to look for every sliver of confidence that you can take out of this thing if you're him and if you're the Dodgers as well. So yeah, I'm glad it was him, because I think that if he can have a bounce back year and it starts tomorrow, there's a chance that he's got a dozen starts at the big league level this year, depending on injuries. There's not a lot of room for him, so he's going to have to pitch his way into it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I will think it's interesting to see how he bounces back because we all know Bobby Miller has the stuff to be an elite major league pitcher. I think a lot of times he's got into his own head about things, and that's been the biggest struggle for him. So after going through last year's struggles and getting more of a fresh start this year, I do think it's interesting to see how he'll bounce back. And I was really looking forward to that in spring training, but then he got hit in the head, unfortunately, and that really delayed his timeline and everything. So I think I'm someone who hasn't given up stock on Bobby Miller. Like, I still think the stuff is just too good to give up on him and not keep giving him chances to prove himself. I think last year was kind of an outlier for various reasons. I think he's a lot closer to what we saw in 2023 when you could make a case he was the ace of the club that year. So yeah, I just don't think like the talent just disappears like that overnight or anything and that he suddenly can't pitch anymore. I trust that the Dodgers are going to get him back on track and can help him, but he also has to make his own strides mentally to get over those challenges, get his mechanics down and stop like letting his emotions overcome him while he's on the mound at times.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's why I'm so curious what this start looks like tomorrow. And I'm with you. I'm not selling on him yet. I think that he can still figure all this out. He's young. I mean, his rookie year was a couple seasons ago. So, he still has a lot of time, I think, to figure this out. But maybe all of those struggles last season, an off season to sort of sit on it and discuss it with the club, maybe that helps get his head in a better place and helps him deal with the adversity that he's bound to face a little better than he did last season. Because I am with you. I think that the talent and the upside is still there with him. It's just, can he figure it out?
Yeah, for sure. So now we'll get into some questions here, try and save a lot of time for everyone so we can interact with all of you. I think the first one I saw was from earlier. which any concern about Ohtani, he's been in kind of a slump, hasn't really strung together any hits. I know the other night he had the homer and just missed 2, but other than that, not a whole lot of hits mixed in there.
Yeah. If the weather conditions are a little different last night, we may not be having this conversation about him. But he did. I mentioned this earlier. He did have a couple of swings tonight that were just like, I think, there's going to be a memeable face coming out of one of those swings where he was kind of like, ooh, like he knew how bad that was. But he had a couple of those tonight. I think he's sort of, we see him as a superhero because of what he's done in a Dodger uniform so far. But, he slumps just like everybody else. And when he does slump, he tries to hit his way out of it just like everyone else. And typically that means for a little while, you're going to go out of the zone. You're going to take some ugly hacks because you're just trying to figure it out. Feels like that's where he's at right now. It's just that when he, once a game or so, he'll still find a barrel and hit a ball 103 miles an hour. It's just a matter of if it finds grass or not, or the seats. So I'm not overly concerned about him. He's probably a little closer to getting out of it, even with some of these ugly swings, than some of the other guys who have been struggling. I think we've seen evidence of that, I think, over the last couple of days. So not concerned, but it definitely shows when he's not right, because it has that trickle down effect with the rest of the lineup.
Yeah, I think the thing is, Ohtani's always been a little bit streaky. I would say most hitters are. There's some guys who are more consistent, like Freddie Freeman, but even he goes through slumps at times, and that's just kind of the ups and downs of a baseball season. The encouraging thing for me with Ohtani is last year when we saw him like slump and struggle a bit at times, he was chasing a lot more out of the zone, and this year I haven't seen that as much from him. He'll occasionally chase like every hitter's going to do, but he seems to be more in the zone so far, so I'm not worried about him. He's still got really good stats all around. The funny thing is this lineup as a whole, they have like 6 players who are really good this year, like way above league average offensively, and then the bottom of the lineup's been a black hole. But when you look at the offense as a whole, it hasn't been as good, which is weird because 6 guys with a 125 weighted runs created plus or better, you'd think they'd have a top 3 offense in the league. So it has been kind of interesting. Like they're hitting, but they're not hitting at the same time or putting together quality at bats together. And that's why I'm not concerned about them, because they have players that are producing well. It's going to click at some point. I don't really have concern with anyone in the lineup besides maybe some guys at the bottom. But even then, like you don't need your bottom of the lineup hitters to be superstars. If you just get like average production out of them or even a little below average, you're going to be completely fine.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. There are certain guys who are slumping, who had been slumping pretty recently, who do feel like are showing some signs of life. Like there's a heartbeat there. And if they can get those guys to be, come around and be just a little better than league average or something like that, like that's when this lineup becomes just almost impossible to pitch against.
Yeah, and I related to Ohtani, I have seen a few questions about his slides from Tim and Don Kim. Like he's still using his left hand sometimes when he's sliding, and that is, or his left shoulder, and that is causing some concern there because, yeah, like he had the injury. Or do you have any concern about him with his slide? I know the Dodgers worked on it a lot in this offseason, but
yeah, you saw him slide like early in the season where the arm was almost up, or like when it would hit the ground, he would pick it up, like it would bounce right back after it hit the dirt. Now he's kind of leaving it there. I'm wondering if it was just so uncomfortable for him trying to do that they probably, this would be a thing that they would discuss. And, he said, look, it feels fine. Like that was kind of a freak thing. I was stealing bases all year, and that never happened once until the World Series. And so maybe they're like, yeah, okay, you're fine. Just kind of try to be careful with it or something like that. And maybe for him, it just might be a comfort thing. And, sometimes too, like when a guy knows he's got to do something like that, and he's in a dead sprint, that can slow you down because your brain goes to, okay, now I have to protect this as soon as I go down. And that last step and a half or something might be a little slower than it typically would be. And when you're stealing bases, that's a difference between being tagged out and being called safe sometimes. So It may be just a comfort thing, but yeah, I have noticed that. I'm with the chat. Like that is something that he's gone back to, and they showed a replay on the stolen base tonight, and it looked like that arm hit pretty firmly on the ground. Obviously, nothing happened to him, but I think that's when everyone took notice and went, "Oh, he's doing that again."
Yeah, my thoughts on it is kind of like it was somewhat of a freak injury last year. He went the entire season without it being an issue, and then hurt it at the end of the year. Like injuries happen in baseball. I'm not overly concerned about it. I prefer if he didn't use that shoulder and arm to slide, but like it's tough when you're playing at full speed to untrain your body from doing that. And it hasn't affected him at any other point in his career. So it was just an unfortunate thing that happened. If it becomes a recurring issue, then like that's something you really have to look into. But like at this moment, it's not like at the front of mind or anything. I'm more concerned about getting Ohtani's right arm built back up for his pitching and being able to manage that again, because the Dodgers have never dealt with that. That was something only the Angels have done, and they're still trying to learn how to manage that from their end. So that's my main concern with him. I'm not really as concerned about the sliding.
Yeah, neither am I. And he's been sliding that way, I'm sure most of his life. And so to try to make such a drastic adjustment to that can be pretty uncomfortable and difficult. So that might be why he's going back to that. And he's not going to slide head first because there's way more injury risk there, especially if you're a guy who's going to be relied on to pitch. You don't want anything to happen if you're going arms first into a base or into a player. So the safer route for him is going to be feet first.
Yeah, for sure. So La Jolla Poppy asks, have I overcame my PTSD from Panda after I allegedly stepped on his foot when he joked about it? If you didn't get a chance to see, I did talk to him about this in our interview. I did an hour-long interview with him. He joked about it and said like why he has that prankster mentality. So yeah, I'm good with him. We're on good terms. I was texting him to set up the interview and everything. Yeah, we're good.
Good for you, Blake. Good for you. You didn't injure anybody.
Yeah, that would have been tough. All right, Dodgers sub asks, Tommy Tanks and Will Smith are on fire. Thoughts on their performances thus far, and what are you predicting from Bobby Miller?
Yeah, I can take this one. Look, I was on the Tommy Tanks bandwagon coming into the season. I thought that he was a 25-ish homer kind of guy based on some of the adjustments made after he got to the Dodgers last season. And we all know that Jeff was predicting a league average season and a bunch of regression from the short time he was with the Dodgers last year. But yeah, I think the adjustments they have made, and especially from the left side, that's been what's most impressive so far this season. Those are real things, and I think that you're starting to see probably why the Dodgers made so many runs to try to get him before they actually made the trade with the Cardinals. He's been fantastic. And just such a valuable player, because if you can get that kind of offensive production from a guy who can play above average defense at the least in two positions up the middle, that's huge. That's huge. And they seem to have found that with him. Will Smith, it's a Will Smith first half start to the season. We'll see how long he can continue to be that productive. We know that he tends to, and catchers tend to do this, but tend to sort of fall off and go on a slide as the season progresses. So we'll see. And then the Bobby Miller thing, we talked about that a little earlier. Tough to say what like the prediction might be for what he does. But I will say if he can give 5 innings, 2 runs, that kind of deal, I think that would be good for his head.
Yeah, I agree with you on Bobby Miller there. I think my main concern is looking for him to not walk a lot of people. That was a struggle for him last year. So if he can control the zone, I think the stuff's going to play up enough where he's going to be fine. So that's kind of the main thing I'm looking for. Don't know about a prediction, but 4 or 5 innings would be really nice, because they've had some spot starts this year that have not been quality and keeping them in the game. So just keep them in the game and I'm happy. With Tommy Edman, for me, it's kind of a complicated thing here, because even before tonight, he had the 4-hit game and he kind of boosted all his stats a lot. But entering tonight, he had a sub 300 on base percentage and his slugging was like 570, something like that. So if his power output drops and he's not getting on base enough, like you are looking at a league average hitter essentially.
Yeah.
So I do question how legit the power is. If he keeps hitting at a 550 slugging rate, like a 290 on base is fine. If that slugging drops a bit and he's like 470, 500 range, then you do start to get a little more concerned there with that low on base percentage. But even if he's not producing at an elite level, like he's still a really good player with his base running and his defense playing everywhere. He's a guy who's going to help you win every night, even if he doesn't get a hit. So like with him, not as concerning. I think we just also have to temper expectations because I'm not sure that 600 slugging percentage is going to last the entire year as much as we would like it to. So at some point he'll have to bring that on base percentage up. With Will Smith, I think you said it a lot too. Like it's a first half Will Smith. I'm more interested in seeing what he does in the second half. It seems like every single year he's elite in the first half and then struggles in the second half. So kind of what I expected from him so far.
Yeah. And with Tommy, I think that he's somewhere in the middle of all of this, right? He's probably not as elite a power hitter as, or as prolific as he has been so far the first, 2+ weeks of the season, 3 weeks of the season. But I also don't think he's a 290 OBP kind of guy. So I think, the power numbers, the rate might fall on that, but I do think there will be an uptick in terms of him getting on base and that kind of stuff. So he's just been able to keep his head way above water with the power numbers. As those start to fall, I think you'll start to see things even out a bit, and he'll be a little bit more where we probably expected him to be. But I still do think that there's a power jump there that we're going to see throughout the season. And again, I don't think he's a 30, 35 homer kind of guy. I just think he's a better power hitter than he showed when he was with St. Louis.
Yeah, I agree with that. But still my concern last year, 294 on base, previous year, 307, career high, 324. All those marks are below league average, sure. 316 for his career. You're going to have to slug to make up for that. And so far he's been doing that. How sustainable that is what I question. I think he is better than what he's shown in the past. I think he'll have more than 13 home runs this year. He's already essentially halfway there. But what mark would make him a really good hitter compared to closer to league average? How many home runs is he going to need? What's he going to need to slug? And I think it will be interesting to see if he continues it, keeps it up, keeps slugging throughout the year.
Yeah. And he's shown, the results haven't always been there. Obviously the power numbers are, but I haven't seen anything overly concerning in his approach. I think some of it is just finding a little luck. And then, he probably could stand to be a little more selective at the plate. But I haven't had any serious concerns with sort of what the approaches look like. And the Dodgers are always going to preach grind out at bats and that kind of thing. So if he can continue to develop that mentality and that approach, I think that'll lead to some better results in terms of the on-base stuff.
Then Cole asks, how concerned are we with the bullpen usage this year, overworked or no? I'll answer it here first, and then you can share. I think the Dodgers have managed it pretty well so far. You've seen Luis Garcia throw a lot of innings so far because he's a guy that they're probably going to DFA at some point. So they're trying to get all the usage they can out of him now. It doesn't matter if they burn him too much. And I think going into the season more as they get deeper, the starting pitchers are going to be better, go deeper into games, and that'll take off some of the workload from the bullpen. We've seen in the last few years, the bullpen has kind of struggled early because the starters haven't been great. And then as the starters start to pick it up, the bullpen also picks it up. They're going to get Kopech back. They're going to get Evan Phillips back. They have guys returning who can also help them, like Dustin May or Tony Gonsolin could slide into the bullpen. I'm never worried about the Dodger pitching staff too much because Andrew Friedman figures it out pretty well. They're thinking about all these things down the line and then the long term of how they're managing their pitchers and trying not to overwork anyone. So for me, no, I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah, I'm not either. This tends to sort of be the way early in the season. They sort of baby their starting pitcher usage. And so it's gonna put more innings on the bullpen arms. But they know that going into the season, and so they manage it accordingly. I'm with you. this isn't a concern, and they're gonna use the arms a lot more who they know aren't gonna be their leverage guys come September. And as you mentioned, that's why we're seeing Garcia get a bunch of innings now. So yeah, no concern there for me.
There was one question here related to the bullpen from Scooter Rooter. Tanner Scott has been struggling a bit. The velo has been coming back. When they first started playing in the United States again after the Japan trip, he was sitting like around 95, which is a few ticks below where he was last year. I talked to Tanner Scott about it and Dave Roberts, and they both kind of said he's working on some things and the velocity tends to trend up over time. We are seeing that now. I think he was sitting like 97 last night, or whatever night it was he pitched. Yeah, it was last night, I think. But yeah, but he still wasn't getting the results. He allowed a few hits, got kind of sketchy there for a minute. You have any concerns about him? What are your thoughts?
No, this is the first look we're getting at him on a regular basis. And when something like that happens, I kind of tend to trust sort of what the player might say. And with the velo stuff, he's been right. Like it's ticking up. I wonder if it's also like an effectiveness kind of situation too, where as he gets more innings under him, you start to see the stuff get better and more deception, more swing and miss, that kind of thing. So we'll see. I'm not concerned about him right now. Especially because what him and Dave Roberts said about the velo is sort of coming. It's coming true so far. So it doesn't feel like the Dodgers are worried about him. They're still giving him the leverage innings. He probably would have got in today if they didn't score that run in the 8th. So, they're not seeing much to be concerned about. I'm not really either then. It's just kind of one of those situations for me right now.
Yeah, so I looked up his stats from last year. March and April was his worst month of the year last year. He allowed 8 runs and a 302 weighted on base average. No other month in the season did he allow more than 5 runs. He had a few months of 0 or 2 runs, and just he wasn't getting hit around as much as the season went on. So I do kind of buy into like his slow build-up type thing and working through things. I'm not going to be concerned unless there is an injury or anything with him. So we haven't heard about that. Tanner said he's physically feeling good. So yeah, not concerned. It's just a little frustrating for the build-up side of things because it's early in the season. They were on kind of a rough patch, and we're looking to nitpick at some things here. But yeah, no concern there for me. Yeah. All right. So I'm not sure if you saw, Luis Robert Jr. has still been connected to the Dodgers for the 5th straight year, something like that. There was the talk of James Outman and a prospect for him. Those have since been tabled. What do you think of Luis Robert, and what would you trade to get him if he's a player you would want?
Yeah, I would not trade a lot, like in terms of prospect capital. I'm not looking at any of the top guys in the system right now for him. Mostly because I think he's almost a Band-Aid fix for me. I don't think he's reliable enough. And if they're going to make that kind of trade, I'm fine losing Outman. But if the White Sox are looking for a top-end prospect, then I don't think Robert is the guy that you go after in that kind of situation. I think you look for something else there. And I just don't know if the production that we've seen earlier in his career is going to be what you get going forward either, especially with the injury history and all of that stuff. So I was a little surprised when I saw that report that they were still having those discussions. But for me, I think, when I saw it, the reason they probably got tabled is because the Dodgers were also not willing to part with anybody that the White Sox were asking for.
Yeah, I think the White Sox have been kind of unrealistic from their expectations of what they're going to acquire so far. I think they've done that with a lot of their players. I think from a Dodgers standpoint, they're probably thinking, like, this is a guy who's shown he has a lot of talent. This is a player sitting on a White Sox team that has been trying to trade him or shopping him for 2 or 3 years now. They're the worst team ever last year. Like, it's probably hard from a mental standpoint to stay locked in and play for that team when they're trying to trade you and they're so bad. So I think it's one of those things where the Dodgers see, like, change of scenery, help him get out of there. Like, maybe we get that production that he used to have. maybe we see something in a swing we can help him address and fix. I don't think the White Sox are great at player development. I think that's probably safe to say. So there's probably something there that they like. And like with what he's shown, it's not like you're just coming from a complete unknown and hoping you can find success for a guy in the first time in his career. It is a guy who was really good. He was a consensus top 5 center fielder in baseball for a few years there, and then started to kind of fall off when the White Sox were falling off. So like, I would be interested as long as you're not giving up a Dalton Rushing, a Jose DePaula, a Jackson Ferris. Like maybe if you're doing Outman and Wroblewski, you could talk me into that kind of thing or something along those lines.
Yeah, let's do that tomorrow. I'd be fine with
that. Yeah, like I would consider going up to Alex Freeland, but that's probably like my absolute highest bar there. And that's more because I see him as a utility guy. So I'm interested. I'd be willing to give up some value, just not giving up any of the top like 3 or 4 prospects in the organization there for him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you there.
All right. David asked, do you think our infield is getting a little slow?
I think it's always been slow since they put this construction of it together. It's slow. I do think that it's not as bad as it's shown recently. Obviously, when Edman in there is there, it gets a little better. But whoever is playing second base of the options that they have, just not as bad as they've shown recently. They're not going to be great. You know what I mean? But they're not going to be as bad as we've seen them over the last week or two. Mookie made a nice play today. That's a ball that would have made me a little nervous had it been hit last year. I don't know if he makes that play and then makes the throw that he made tonight. So he's definitely, I think, made some positive strides. He's not going to be a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. He's probably maybe not going to be an above average shortstop, but if he can just sit around that line of being good and right on that average line, then the bat makes up for it. And in all honesty, if he's an average level defensive shortstop, that's not going to cost them anything significant, in terms of games or things like that. So I'm fine with him there. Muncy, he's had a little bit of a weird year. I like he's kicking balls around that he typically had not in the past, and the throwing has been an issue a little bit for him, and that hasn't been a thing in the past really either for him. So he doesn't have a ton of range, but the balls he can get to, he usually plays pretty well. So I just think while there's an offensive funk going on, there might be something going on defensively too. That's similar. I'm not overly concerned about it right now, but obviously if that trend like we've seen over the last few series continues, there's going to have to be some discussions because it can't be that bad.
Yeah, so I think my bigger concern is the outfield, especially like the defense and speed combo there. Teoscar Hernandez is probably one of the worst defensive outfielders in baseball. I know the other day he made that like over the shoulder catch and people were hyping it up as like a great catch, but any other right fielder makes that look routine and it doesn't have to be a great catch. It was like an 85% catch probability type play there. He let the one bounce right in front of him that should have been caught. It was like 95% catch probability. Michael Conforto the other day also going down the line. He let that one drop. Like
bad.
Andy Pajes has been experience out there in center when he plays. There's been some nice plays. There's been some really bad plays. Like that's my concern with them. I think they probably have one of the worst defensive outfields in baseball, if not the worst. I think a lot of it could kind of be patched up with a really good defensive center fielder there, which is kind of why I am intrigued by the idea of going to get Luis Robert. But yeah, I'm not too concerned about the infield. It's mainly the outfield for me. I don't question the bats for the corner guys. It's just like that speed and defense combo out there is kind of concerning to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I was going to pick a line that I was concerned about defensively, it's certainly the outfield. It's not the infield right now. And like you said, like they're one piece away from, I think, being able to Band-Aid this up. And whether that's Tommy Edman or somebody else, I think that can fix it. And we saw today too that like Pajes is much more of a corner outfielder than he is a center fielder. Obviously, we knew that going in, but They got to put guys where they got to put them to keep the bats in the lineup. So it is what it is right now. I think that they're not panicking with it, which is why Pajas is still on the roster and, all of this stuff. I think this team eventually is going to hit well enough and consistently enough where this isn't a significant issue. Like the defense wasn't great last year either, and they won the World Series. Like it wasn't Yankee level, buffoonery out there. So I think that for the most part, they're going to be able to get away with it. And their pitching is so good too that, they're gonna mask a lot of what could have potentially been some ugliness with the defense. So I think they're fine. I think guys just got to come out of some of this, defense slumps too. Sometimes I think we're seeing that a little bit right now.
Yeah. And then both Larry here and Hector asked about Dustin May. What would it take for the Dodgers to want to extend him? How good does he have to be? Like, will they even make an attempt to bring him back?
I think they will. If I may, it's rare that a guy would get extended in his walk year, especially a guy with his track record, of injury. I think they both are probably comfortable playing this out to the end. If he stays healthy this year, and obviously if he produces like he is, and he's a frontline kind of starter, then yeah, I do think they try to bring him back. But if he does that, there's going to be some offers out there from him from other teams, and so he's going to have some decisions to make, and he's going to have some options. But I think the Dodgers really do want to see if the guy can stay healthy for a full season before they start talking contract stuff with him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think the Dodgers have always been willing to take on injury risk type players if they think the upside is there. Like we've seen them do it with Tyler Glasnow most recently, and some other pitchers, Blake Snell. I just think he needs to throw more than he's shown in his past so far for them to be willing to take on that kind of risk still. I think there's other teams that might be more desperate to bring in a guy with talent that might be willing to take on that risk at a higher level than the Dodgers would. The Dodgers also have a lot of young pitchers that they could kind of bring up and replace them, and guys coming back next year, like River Ryan, Gavin Stone. So at some point, you can have too many pitchers to manage, and they might get to that point, and it might be a situation where they have to let Dustin May walk. But if he has a really great year, I think you give him a qualifying offer, tell him to go see what else is out there. If they find an offer that they like and are willing to match it, I think they'd be willing to do that. If another team's willing to go ridiculously overboard and overpay for him, I think they'd say thank you and let him walk. So it's kind of dependent on a lot of what he does this year. If he keeps it up for the rest of the year and throws 120, 150 innings like this, then yeah, I think they'll really want him back. If he has another injury-riddled year or the stuff starts to decline, I think they'd be willing to let him walk with the depth that they have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for a qualifying offer, he would have to have a pretty solid year for them to offer that. And I think the only way he takes it is if the long-term offers aren't there for him that he would like because of the injury history. And I also think that means that his ERA, for the qualifying offer to come and for him to consider taking it because the other options aren't as good as he wants, the ERA would have to start with a 3. And right now he's pitching above that.
Yep. And then Jose asks, who do you think will be the first to be called up from OKC? And somewhat related, OTC asks, will Kim be called up soon? So for me, I think Kim will only get called up if they have a clear runway to playing time for him, which means someone gets injured or they reach a point where they're no longer willing to give Andy Pajes or Miguel Rojas opportunities to play. And that's probably going to be in a month or so from now at that point. Dave Roberts said they're willing to give Andy Pajes 150 plate appearances, and I think he's at 50, if that, or something right now. So it's going to be a bit. I don't think they're going to call up Kim to replace Chris Taylor and sit on the bench or anything.
Right.
people need to understand Chris Taylor's role is to get 2 at-bats a week and be a defensive sub. Like, they're not going to call up Kim to do that. They'd rather have him playing every day, getting 4 at-bats a day and going from there. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense for them to replace Chris Taylor with someone like Kim to sit on the bench. So first guy to get called up, if it's an injury, I will say it's Kim. If it's like a 2 or 3 day thing that they're calling someone up for, I'll say Outman. And surprise guy like Hunter Fiducia probably on there just because that's who they brought up last time.
Yeah. I assume we're talking non-pitchers here, and I kind of agree with you. I think the easy answer is probably Fiducia, and I think that if it for most of these guys who I think people are interested in having called up, they're all in the same situation where they're not going to call a guy up to sit on the bench. They're going to call a guy up to play just about every day. So like someone like Rushing, I don't see it in the near future. Like there would have to be a string of injuries that forced their hand to bring somebody like him up. I think outside of Fiducia, for me, just kind of going down the roster, I could see potentially. I mean, because it's got to be someone on the 40-man too. I guess Kim and Outman would be like, I'm with you. Outman would be a situation where like Pages went down or Conforto went down or something like that. Yeah, but beyond that, there's not a ton of need right now aside from injury. So I think it's very dependent on that. I think if we're just saying strictly on merit, or somewhat on merit, maybe like there's some sort of opening, potentially Kim, but I think we're still probably 6 weeks away from that really being a serious option.
Yeah, I think they want to see Kim keep it up for a longer stretch too. And also something the Dodgers like to see with their minor leaguers is they want to see them fail and see how they bounce back from failure, because you're going to fail at the major league level. It's one thing to be really good at AAA for a while, but if you never have that struggle and having to deal with that and make adjustments, you're probably not going to be successful at the major league level when you do have to start dealing with that. So I think you could argue he dealt with that in spring training. I think it's a lot different circumstances there where he was working on his swing and everything. So I think it's really different there. But I think they don't want to rush him and have him lose confidence early or anything, as great as he's been so far. So I don't think they're going to rush it. They don't really have a point to. They're still winning games. And at some point, if Andy Pages is still struggling, or let's say Miguel Rojas is playing poorly still, like maybe they end up making that switch. But for right now, I think it's going to be a bit.
Yeah, agree.
And then also related to that, Hector and Howie have both asked how Kim has been in center field. I think you and Jeff answered this the other night, and Jeff was saying he was talking to the OKC comms person there, and it was basically a report of like, you don't hate him out there, you don't notice him out there, it's just kind of like whatever, which totally fine for a guy learning the position. So that gives me some hope he can play it and play it well enough going forward. But yeah, it's not going to be like him coming up and providing elite defense. I think if he came up, it would make more sense to put him at second and Edman in center.
Yeah, that was exactly what I said when we had this conversation. But yeah, the reports have been like uninspiring, but I think that in itself, the fact that they're not negative is sort of a plus, because the guy's learning the position, and anything that's not totally terrible is probably a positive in that situation.
Then also, I feel like we might have answered this a little, but should Fiducia or Rushing be backing up Smith instead of Barnes? So I've talked about this a lot. I think a lot of fans undervalue the value that Austin Barnes brings to the team. He's not a great hitter. He's not a great defender, but he is basically another coach on the field. Every pitcher on the staff loves throwing to him. And every time you see a pitcher struggling or going through a rough patch, they pretty much end up throwing to Austin Barnes in their next start. And that might end up becoming their personal catcher. We saw Austin Barnes kind of led Yamamoto a lot early last year. Austin Barnes has kind of become the personal catcher for Roki Sasaki. So yes, the numbers aren't great on the surface, but what he's providing to help the pitchers, guide them, get them through things, and working with them provides a lot of value as a backup catcher. Realistically, if they call up Fiducia, like I put this out on Twitter the other day, if they call up Fiducia and he hits like 280, which is what he's hit in his career in the minors, you're essentially getting like 6 hits over the course of the season, more than Austin Barnes had last year in his same plate appearances. It's just something, it's not a huge deal. Austin Barnes isn't a good hitter. It doesn't really matter for this team. They have 6 elite hitters at the top of their lineup. You can have 1 or 2 bad spots at the bottom of your lineup, and it's going to be fine. They're not going to call up Dalton Rushing to play once a week or twice a week like Austin Barnes does. If they call up Rushing, it's going to be to play pretty much every day on a full-time basis. With Fiducia, I get the logic there of wanting him because the bat is better, but he's not providing that defensive value and leadership that the Dodgers value a lot. I mean, I just don't think there's a whole lot of upside in making the change. Maybe it wins you 1 more game over the course of a season from the offensive production only, but I don't think you can like really calculate how many wins you might end up losing because of the defensive value that Austin Barnes isn't bringing to help guide the pitchers.
Yeah, I totally agree. Very similar to things I've said in the past about this. And in regards to, Barnes and Chris Taylor, like this front office is one of the smartest in all of professional sports at the moment. And they do things as an organization as well or better than just about everyone who does things in baseball and in other sports. Like that's how good and that's how they're seen around North American professional sports leagues. The Dodgers and their organization, the things that they do are about as good or better than anybody else who does those things. And I'll say this, if they feel that there's value in keeping a guy like Austin Barnes, given his production, and keeping a guy like Chris Taylor around, given his production, and Taylor's got a little situation with the contract and all of that, I understand that. I'm not going to argue with that group right now. And we've said this before too. Chris Taylor in his spot on the roster and Austin Barnes as a backup catcher is not going to mean the difference between, making another postseason run, winning another World Series, and not. They're just not important enough, and they don't play enough to have that sort of impact on what happens in that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a big point I've made too. Like, it just doesn't matter at the end of the day. It might cost you like a slight win percentage each game, but it's just not enough to make a difference in the long run where you have to go out and make that change. It's basically the 24th, 25th guys on your roster at this point. The impact is so minimal. It doesn't really matter. The Dodgers value the clubhouse a lot, and he is one of their clubhouse leaders. So they just don't.
And I'll say this too. We don't get to praise our culture and clubhouse culture and then go, they need to DFA Chris Taylor. Part of what makes the Dodgers an attractive destination for guys, part of the reason why guys are willing to take maybe a little less money to come here and play in this culture and have a chance to win is because of how they treat certain players and the way they've done quote unquote right by guys like Chris Taylor. Other players see that, and it's part of why they feel like if they come to the Dodgers, they'll be respected and valued. And so whether we like it or not, from a production standpoint with a guy like that, the Dodgers see it as value in different places. And they believe that it helps them attract other people into the organization who are going to play on a regular basis. And so, we like to talk about how great the culture is. It's all part of it. This all folds into it.
Yeah, I agree with you a lot there. Everything you said, like the Dodgers, for better or worse, however you want to look at it, like they're a team that's going to value the culture, the clubhouse, and they're going to make some decisions that maybe aren't the best to optimize for winning, but it's going to help them in the long run of developing their organization and getting more guys in the future. So yeah, I don't think it's any thing to actually scoff at or be upset about. It is what it is. These guys are on the roster. They might or might not help them win. You can debate that all, but at the end of the day, it's not changing their championship odds, and that's kind of all they care about. So Laker Toby asks, For the super chat, how long do you stick with Muncy? I think you guys talked a bit about this the other day. I was driving back, so I didn't get to share my thoughts, so I'll answer it first, and you can kind of piggyback off that. A lot of times with the players, 150 at-bats is the number where like you start to see their walk rates and strikeout rates stabilize to their normals and what they're actually producing and what they're going to be producing for the year. I think that's why the Dodgers usually give that number as their kind of runway for players like they did with Gavin Lux last year and Andy Pages. I think they're not going to really panic about anyone until it gets to that point. So Muncy's at what, 60 plate appearances for the year or something? I don't think they're that panicked yet. He was really good last year. I know there's kind of a narrative that's been going around that he wasn't good, which I'm not sure where that came from because he had like a 135 weighted runs created plus, and he had that stretch in the postseason where he reached in like 11 straight plate appearances or something like that. So yeah, Muncy was good last year. He's always been a streaky hitter throughout his career. He's a guy who can hit 10 homers in a month and then his numbers look fine for the year. And you look back and you're like, wow, why were we worried about him? And then he'll have a stretch where he drives you crazy for 2 weeks because he's not hitting at all and striking out a lot. And then the next 2 weeks, he's hitting 5 homers in that 2-week stretch. So yeah, I'm not concerned about Muncy. I think if it gets to a point like maybe in May or so and he's still struggling, like that's when you start to say like, is it Alex Freeland time? Do we bring up Ha-Seong Kim to play third kind of thing? Like at this moment, I don't think they're really thinking too much into it. I asked Dave Roberts about it, and he said he's seeing positive signs from Muncy. His swing has looked better. He's been more comfortable at the plate. He had 2 walks today, I believe. So that was good to see because when Muncy's at his best, he's really controlling the strike zone. So like, yeah, I don't think it's something to really put too much thought into at this moment.
Yeah, Laker Toby, I think we're already starting to see some of the shift with him. 2 walks tonight, and I think he's had a handful over the last handful of games or so. So kind of trending in the right direction, I think, for him. And I'm with you, Blake. Like, I don't think the Dodgers are thinking about having to do something with him at all. And for people like the 150 plate appearance runway, it's give or take about a month and a half or so. So we're still about a month away from even being able to really see and call like, okay, is he actually struggling, or was this just a funk to start the season?
Yeah, for sure. Here, this one. Any concerns about trying to keep up with the Padres and Giants?
Yeah, we touched on this right when we started. For the struggles that the Dodgers have had over the last couple of weeks, they're like, I don't know, a couple of games back of the Padres in first place, whatever it might be now after tonight. No concerns there.
Yeah, I mean, both those teams have been playing hot to start the year. At some point, they're going to go on a cold stretch, and the Dodgers will be on a hot stretch. And these things even out over a long course of the season. I still think the Diamondbacks are the second best team in the division, and I would still bet on them to finish in second place. So, yeah, I'm not really concerned at all. All right, lots of questions about the bottom of the lineup. So, JPS, how can they fix their biggest flaw, which is the bottom of the lineup? And GI asks, who's the first to reach the Mendoza line between the guys at the bottom of the lineup? So, a lot to dissect there. I think to start, like the first main part of this is the guys at the bottom of the lineup are going to start hitting better just on their own at some point. Like Miguel Rojas is not going to hit 70 or whatever he's hitting for the entire year. Kike's not going to hit 120 for the entire year. Might be close to the 200 range, but he'll start to trend up. I think we've already seen some better at-bats from him. Andy Pages, I don't love his bat, but he's better than what he's shown so far. And we already talked a lot about Muncy. So if we're talking about reaching the Mendoza line, probably Pages, because I know Muncy's going to strike out a lot, and Rojas is way below all them, and Kike is pretty far below. So yeah, I guess I'll go Pages. But like related to fixing the bottom of the lineup, I think guys will figure things out, and at some point, if they don't, the Dodgers will make changes and bring up guys like Alex Freeland or Ha-Seong Kim, or they'll make a trade and figure things out. So these things work themselves out. I'm not too worried about it. They spent like pretty much the entire first half of last season without a bottom of the lineup, and they had like Kevin Biggio playing on a daily basis, and Nick Ahmed was getting in there, and Taylor Trammell even got some run there for like a game or two. Like, yeah, it's just too early for the Dodgers to like make any major changes or panic, and it's going to be fine enough at the end of the season where like we're going to look back on this and be like, hey, remember when they had Miguel Rojas hitting 070, and you're like, yeah, that was fun.
Well, we can say now, and remember when we had this same conversation for months last year and the year before that, and probably the year before that. Like, this is a thing that happens on an annual basis with probably just about every fan base, and they're the bottom of their order. I will say this: I think that things will start to stabilize for that part of the lineup soon, as guys get a little healthier too. Like, there's been a bunch of like just sort of missed time that's caused a lot of shuffling, and probably guys who you don't need taking 25 plate appearances a week are getting that right now, and I don't think that's necessarily the role that Dave Roberts has envisioned for them, or the front office has envisioned for them. So Freddie coming back on a more regular basis, the outfield sort of stabilizing itself too, Teo coming back, like all of that stuff means that guys are going to start to slot where they're supposed to be. And I think that'll help also with some of the numbers starting to trend upward.
Yeah. And then there is kind of two bigger pieces of news we can close out here, and then we'll get to a food one that was asked. Dodger Stadium is hosting the Olympics this year. We did not talk about that. Do you have any thoughts on that? Are you excited, looking forward to it? What's your take here?
I'm pretty indifferent on it right now. It's cool that it isn't Dodger Stadium. Like, that part of it is great. In terms of like being excited about it, not yet. I kind of want to understand more about how this is all going to work and who might be playing and that kind of thing. I think it's cool from like just a standpoint of like it's in the Olympics, but like for me, the WBC already takes care of that Jones for me, and the passion that the players play the WBC with is so good, and the venues are so good that I wonder if the Olympics aren't a letdown from that.
Yeah, I kind of feel like they will be a letdown. I'm not in favor of LA hosting the Olympics. I think there's a lot of issues that come with it. That whole new discussion here.
In general, yeah.
In general, right? So like, not going to get too deep into that. Yeah, I mean, I think Dodger Stadium was the only logical place to host it when the Olympics were in LA. Like, just made sense. They weren't going to do it in Angel Stadium. You could argue the Coliseum, but I'm sure it's going to be busy with other events there. So changing it back and forth just didn't make sense logistically. So yeah, it was always going to be Dodger Stadium, and kind of just expected there. And then also we got the news that Aaron Judge is the captain for the World Baseball Classic of Team USA. I won't say how many Dodgers will be participating, because I think it's very early to know that. We don't know the teams that are fully in it yet, I don't believe. And we don't even know who the roster is fully going to be next year, but anyone you're hoping plays in it from the Dodgers or would like to see there.
I assume Ohtani, Sasaki, and Yamamoto pitch or play for Japan. Possibly Teoscar, given his recent run. On the U.S. side, I think they have guys that might be asked. I just don't know if they would do it. Like Mookie, Freddie, I'm sure. Maybe Will Smith is the guy who actually does it.
I think he was on the roster last time. I believe so.
Yeah. So he's probably on the U.S. side. He's probably, I would say, the best bet to take that invitation if it comes.
Yeah, I think Mookie would want to do it. I think Freddie would play for Canada again, like he normally does. Edman for Korea. I think he really enjoyed doing that last time. He talked a lot about it. Yeah, I mean, Dodgers have a lot of stars. The side I'm more focused on right now is kind of the pitching side, because it's always a struggle to see like who's actually allowed to play in it. Teams don't really want their pitchers in it. A lot of pitchers do want to go and do it. I mean, for the jokes, I'd love to see Blake Treinen on Team USA. I think that would just be amazing. It'd be cool to see like Blake Snell out there, and because USA has never really had a good pitching staff. Like the year they won, Marcus Stroman was their ace, and last year it was like Merrill Kelly and Lance Lynn. So, or not last time they played. So, like, I would like to see some star pitchers get in there for USA, and yeah, I think Japan always gives it their all, and USA matched up well against them, but Japan just had the pitching edge last time. I think they had Yamamoto, Otani, Sasaki, and Imanaga, I think, as their main 4 pitchers. Like, that was just a lot of fun. All right. Let me pull up this last one. The food question. Richard asks, what's your cereal go-to?
Ooh. That's a good one. You know what? I like Raisin Bran. I kind of do. I lean that way a little bit. I'm not like the super sugary stuff, like Fruit Loops. Not super into. Honey Nut Cheerios. That's another one that I'll kind of go to every now and then. I'm not a big cereal guy anymore, but that's kind of what I would keep around if I was in the mood.
Yeah, for me right now, I have a lot of Honey Bunches of Oats. I have the honey one and the almond one. I think I have some Honey Nut Cheerios. I like those. If we're looking for like the fun answer, maybe Captain Crunch.
Like Crunch Berries and Lucky Charms if we're going fun.
I like, Lucky Charms. I like Cinnamon Toast Crunch is good. So yeah, those are probably my answers there. All right, so that'll wrap us up for today. I thank everyone for joining us. We had about 1,100 people in here throughout the night across all platforms. And my first time hosting. I hope you all enjoyed it. Anthony, thank you for joining us tonight. And I'll see you all next time. And go Dodgers.